Before Amazon existed, one company already did everything Amazon does, and more. You could buy tools from them, appliances, clothes, furniture, insurance, a mortgage. You could order an entire house from their catalog, walls, roof, foundation, everything, and have it shipped to your door in pieces, ready to assemble. 2/3 of Americans shop there every single quarter. Their sales approached 1% of the entire American economy. At its peak, more Americans worked for this company than served in the United States military. They were called Sears, and almost no one under 30 has ever set foot in one of their stores, despite the fact that their parents probably grew up inside them. Somewhere in this story, there is one decision made in a single afternoon that handed the future to a 29-year-old named Jeff Bezos. By the time we get there, you'll understand why it was inevitable, and why nobody inside Sears saw it coming. This isn't just a story about Sears, it's a story about what happens when companies stop building and start extracting. By the end of this video, you'll understand something that every company currently considered too big to fail should be terrified of. This is the story of Sears, Roebuck & Company, the most dominant retailer in American history, and how it was dismantled from the inside. To understand what Sears became, you have to understand the America it was born into. It's 1886. The United States is still a nation of farms and small towns. The railroad has just connected the coasts, but most Americans live far from any major city. Far from the department stores that line city streets, far from the variety and prices that urban shoppers take for granted. If you lived in rural Iowa or rural Georgia or rural Montana, you bought what was available within a few miles of your home. That meant whatever the local general store carried, which wasn't much and wasn't cheap. The local merchant had a monopoly over you. He knew it, you knew it, and there was nothing you could do about it. Into this world, in the summer of 1886, a 23-year-old railway station agent in North Redwood, Minnesota, noticed a shipment of pocket watches that a local jeweler had refused to accept. His name was Richard Sears. Instead of sending the watches back, Sears bought them himself and sold them to other station agents along the rail line at a profit. He was so good at it that within a year he'd quit his job, moved to Chicago, and started a mail-order watch company. He hired a watchmaker named Alva Roebuck to handle repairs. By 1893, the partnership had a name: Sears, Roebuck & Company. Here's something most people don't know about those early years. Sears wasn't selling luxury goods. He was selling necessity. He understood that the gap between what rural Americans needed and what they could access was enormous, and that anyone who could bridge that gap would build something unstoppable. What Sears discovered in those early catalog years wasn't just a business model. It was a psychological advantage that competitors would never fully understand. The more choices you gave people, the more trust you built. The more trust you built, the more they bought. And the more they bought, the more dependent they became. That insight would make Sears untouchable for nearly a century. It would also make them blind to the moment it stopped being true. The catalog grew with it. By 1897, it was 500 pages long. By 1908, you could order a bicycle, a piano, a rifle, a sewing machine, a complete kitchen, and, as of 1908, an entire house. They called it the Consumer's Bible. In rural households across America, the Sears catalog sat on the kitchen table right next to the actual Bible. And in many homes, it was consulted more often. But surviving in business and dominating it are two very different things. Sears was about to make a leap that would transform a successful catalog company into something America had never seen before. In 1906, Sears went public. Goldman Sachs managed the IPO. The company opened a massive new catalog plant and office complex on the west side of Chicago. 40 acres of buildings that processed thousands of orders a day. By 1908, Sears began selling something no retailer had ever offered before: houses, not blueprints, not a referral to a local contractor. Actual houses, pre-cut, pre-measured, shipped in kits by railroad, ready for a buyer and a few helpers to assemble on site. The catalog showed you floor plans, room dimensions, paint colors, and a complete parts list. Between 1908 and 1940, Sears sold somewhere between 70,000 and 75,000 homes across America. Let that land for a moment. 75,000 houses sold through a catalog, shipped in pieces by train. Many of them are still standing today. There are entire neighborhoods in the United States, streets full of houses that were ordered from a catalog and built by their owners with their own hands. Some of those homeowners didn't tell their neighbors where the house came from. They were embarrassed because buying a house from a catalog seemed too ordinary, too commercial, for something that was supposed to be a dream. But the world was changing. The automobile was arriving. Americans were leaving farms and moving to cities and suburbs. Mail order still worked, but Sears founders didn't see what was coming. The man who did was a former Army general named Robert E. Wood. Wood joined Sears in 1924 and immediately understood what the automobile meant. It meant Americans could travel farther to shop. It meant they would congregate not in city centers, but at the edges, at crossroads, at the expanding outskirts of towns and cities. He began buying land at suburban crossroads. Those crossroads became shopping malls, and Sears anchored every one of them. In 1925, Sears opened its first retail department store inside a catalog plant in Chicago. By 1929, on the eve of the Great Depression, Sears operated more than 300 department stores. During the Depression, when most retailers were collapsing, Sears grew. It championed thrift. It sold necessities. It told working Americans, "We sell what you actually need, not what rich people buy." By the end of the 1930s, the number of stores had nearly doubled. After World War II, Sears followed the American population into the suburbs. The GI Bill created millions of new homeowners in new subdivisions outside every major city. Sears was already there, waiting. By the mid-1950s, Sears operated more than 700 stores across North America. It had expanded into Mexico, into Canada. In 1975, Sears, J.C. Penney, and Montgomery Ward together captured 43% of all U.S. department store sales. They weren't just a retailer anymore. They were building something else entirely, and it was about to make them the most powerful commercial institution in America. By 1969, Sears was the largest retailer in the world, not just in America, in the world. To mark the occasion, they announced plans to build a new headquarters in downtown Chicago. Not a building, a monument. The Sears Tower broke ground in 1970 and opened in 1973. 110 stories, 1,454 feet tall, the tallest building in the world, a distinction it would hold for 25 years. They built the tallest building on Earth because they could. At its peak, Sears operated more than 3,500 stores. It employed 350,000 people. Its brands were American institutions: Craftsman Tools, Kenmore Appliances, Die Hard Batteries, Allstate Insurance. To put that in perspective, Craftsman alone, acquired for $500 in 1927, became one of the most trusted tool brands in American history. They paid $500. That's roughly $10,000 today. But the numbers only tell part of the story. To understand what Sears actually was, you have to understand what it could do. Sears didn't just sell things, it invented things. In 1931, during the depths of the Great Depression, Sears' profits exceeded $12 million. Not survived, profited. In 1985, Sears launched the Discover Card. the first credit card in history to offer cashback rewards based on purchases. 20 million Americans signed up within 4 years. Sears didn't just sell to America, it financed America. It also insured America. Allstate Insurance, founded by Sears in 1931, is still one of the largest insurers in the country today. Sears created it. It housed America. The catalog homes are still standing. And for Black Americans living under Jim Crow segregation in the South, this is the part that rarely gets mentioned. The Sears catalog was a lifeline. In towns where Black Americans were refused service at local stores, forced to enter through back doors, or simply not allowed to shop at all, the Sears catalog asked no questions. It took your money and shipped you the same goods as everyone else. For millions of people, it wasn't just a catalog, it was dignity. Sears didn't just distribute products, it distributed access. At its absolute peak, Sears was the largest private employer in the United States of America. More Americans clocked in at Sears every day than served in the active U.S. military. One company, more workers than the entire armed forces. If that just stopped you for a second, hit the like button. It helps this channel more than you'd think. Remember what I said at the beginning, that one afternoon, one decision handed the future to a 29-year-old named Jeff Bezos? We're almost there. But first, you need to understand just how far they had to fall. In 1990, for the first time in history, Walmart overtook Sears in total revenue. Sears didn't panic. They didn't adapt. They looked at the numbers and told themselves it was a temporary fluctuation. A discount retailer couldn't compete with the Sears brand. Customers would come back. But they didn't come back. Walmart created the pressure. Lampert would turn that pressure into collapse. But that comes later. They had more power than most institutions in America, more reach than any retailer on earth, and they were completely convinced it would last forever. They were wrong, and the way it fell apart is unlike anything you've heard before. The story of Sears' collapse isn't a single event. It's a slow unwinding, a series of decisions, each one seemingly reasonable, each one making the next catastrophe more likely. It started with the catalog. The Sears catalog had been running continuously since 1888. Over 100 years, it had become more than a retail tool. It was a cultural institution. At its height, the catalog employed more than 100,000 people just to process and fulfill orders. By the late 1980s, the catalog was struggling. Logistics costs had risen. The retail stores were more profitable. Leadership decided the catalog was dead weight. In 1993, Sears canceled it. Sit with that for a moment. A company that had spent 105 years building the infrastructure, the brand trust, and the customer relationships for exactly the kind of commerce the internet would create, decided that mail order retail was dead weight. They had the catalog, they had the supply chain, they had the trust of more American households than any institution in the country. They canceled it on a Tuesday, sent the notice, moved on. 2 years later, in 1995, a 29-year-old named Jeff Bezos started selling books from a garage in Seattle. Sears didn't just miss the internet. They walked away from the only expertise that would have let them dominate it, and handed it to someone who was still figuring out how to buy boxes in bulk. But the catalog wasn't the only mistake. As Walmart and Target and Home Depot ate into Sears categories one by one, Sears got trapped in the middle. Too expensive for discount shoppers, not premium enough for upscale ones. The stores started to look dated. Investment and maintenance slowed. The shopping experience deteriorated. By 2005, Sears was weakened, but it was still salvageable. Then came Eddie Lampert. Lampert was a hedge fund manager, a brilliant one. He had made his reputation by identifying undervalued assets, acquiring them cheaply, and extracting their value. He was not a retailer. He had no interest in building a retail business. In 2005, he engineered a merger between Sears and Kmart, creating Sears Holdings, a combined company with 355,000 employees and more than 3,500 stores. Wall Street loved it. The stock price soared. What followed was one of the most systematic dismantlings of a major American corporation in modern history. Lampert operated from a compound in Miami. He rarely visited stores. He required executives to pitch him via video conference, competing with each other for resources as if they ran separate companies rather than one. Collaboration collapsed. Long-term investment stopped. Every decision was evaluated through a financial engineering lens. The stores deteriorated further. Competitors invested in their spaces. Sears didn't. Customers walked in, looked around, and left. In 2017, Lampert's team awarded executives more than $25 million in bonuses. That same year, the company announced it was ending life insurance benefits for approximately 90,000 retired employees, people who had worked at Sears for decades, who had been promised this benefit as part of their retirement. The benefit was worth between $5,000 and $15,000 per retiree. Somewhere in those 90,000 people was a woman who had spent 30 years behind a Sears register in a town that no longer had anything else. She got a letter in the mail. $25 million in executive bonuses. Life insurance canceled for 90,000 retirees in the same year. Meanwhile, Lampert was selling the assets. Craftsman, acquired for $500 in 1927, built into an American icon over 90 years, was sold to Stanley Black & Decker in 2017 for $900 million. Die Hard went next. Kenmore was licensed. The real estate was sold to investment trusts that Lampert himself controlled and then leased back to Sears, meaning Sears now paid rent on buildings it used to own. The company that once built homes for working Americans was now selling its own walls. The stock that had traded at nearly $200 a share in April 2007 fell below $1 in September 2018. On October 15, 2018, Sears Holdings filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. 132 years after Richard Sears bought a crate of pocket watches on a railway platform in Minnesota, the company that had housed, clothed, insured, and financed America was gone. But here's the thing about how Sears ended. It didn't just destroy a company. It left something behind. And some of what it left behind is more relevant right now than it has ever been. After the bankruptcy, Lampert bought the remaining assets out of his own hedge fund for $5.2 billion. The brands, the inventory, the remaining stores, all purchased at bankruptcy prices by the man who had driven it there. Critics called it looting. Lampert called it a rescue. As of late 2025, fewer than a dozen Sears stores remain open in the United States. But Sears' legacy isn't the empty stores. It's everything it built that outlasted it. Allstate Insurance, still one of the largest insurers in America, was a Sears invention. The Discover card, the first cashback credit card, was a Sears invention. The modern American suburban mall, anchored by a department store, positioned at a highway crossroads, that was a Sears invention. Robert E. Wood saw the automobile coming and built retail around it. Every mall anchor tenant that came after was following a blueprint Sears wrote. And those 75,000 catalog houses, spread across neighborhoods in nearly every state, are still standing. People live in them right now who have no idea their home was ordered from a catalog and assembled by hand. Sears didn't fail because it was weak. It failed because it stopped adapting, and then because the people who should have saved it chose to extract value instead of build it. That pattern didn't begin with Sears, and it won't end with it. The financialization of American business, the idea that a company's job is to maximize shareholder return rather than serve customers and employees, didn't kill Sears alone. It's the operating philosophy of a significant portion of corporate America right now. The question isn't whether this happens again. It's which company you're watching it happen to right now, and whether anyone inside it can see it yet. The company that once let Americans order anything from anywhere ultimately became something else entirely, an institution whose most valuable product was itself. Which company today feels big on the outside but hollow on the inside? Drop it in the comments. I reply to all of them. If you want to know what happened to the other empires that were supposed to last forever, subscribe. A new one drops every week.